What's up, guys? Welcome to a new episode of Beer, Politics, and Books. I know I've been pretty neglectful making these videos, almost as much as Trump neglects Tiffany, but hopefully I'll be a little more consistent making videos this year, but probably not. Recently, a lot of media attention has been paid to evangelical Christians who were responsible for the election of Donald Trump and the near election of Roy Moore in Alabama. Many people have wondered how it is that evangelical Christians were capable of supporting people like Trump or Moore when they clearly exhibited moral flaws, which is why I decided to do a review of Francis Fitzgerald's book, The Evangelicals. The book explores the development of evangelical and Protestant religions in America all the way from colonial times to today and its effect on culture and politics in our country. The biggest misconception is that evangelical Christianity is in and of itself a denomination. However, evangelicalism is really more of a vague mismatch of Baptist, Methodist, and Pentecostal churches all crammed into one. Evangelical Christianity is kind of like a trash can punch at a frat party. You don't know who made it, you don't know what's in it, but you know that if you take too much of it, you'll probably be speaking incoherently. Up until the last 50 years, Protestant faiths in America have been primarily focused on very specific theological debates, such as whether or not the Bible is meant to be interpreted literally or non-literally. These very specific theological debates were really of no interest to the general population in America, and as a consequence, religious zeal in America in the late 40s and early 50s was on the decline. That is, of course, until a man came along who defined the archetype of most popular evangelical preachers who followed, and reinvigorated the Christian faith in America. His name was Billy Graham. Billy Graham was a very charismatic preacher who broke away from previous Protestant faith leaders by not focusing in on very specific theological arguments, but instead focusing on general themes such as Christ's love and how to live a good life. While I don't think that there was anything particularly controversial or insane about Billy Graham's teachings or philosophy, I do think it led to an evolution in the Christian faith where it was now no longer focused on theological principles, but instead focused on a cult of personality. This led to the advent of other popular televangelists such as Oral Roberts, Pat Robertson, Jim Bakker, and his Ronald McDonald impersonator / wife, Tammy Bakker. However, one of the most important televangelists who was primarily responsible for pushing evangelicals and other Christians into the Republican Party was Jerry Falwell. The story about how evangelical Christians became such a primary wing of the Republican Party is a somewhat complicated one with many actors. Up until the 1980s, the Republicans were no more religious than the Democrats were. That is until 1976, when vice presidential candidate and future Viagra spokesman Bob Dole realized that if the Republicans took an anti-abortion stance, that they could steal blue-collar Catholics away from the Democratic Party, who had been a staple of that party since JFK.
ED, often called impotent. It's a little embarrassing to talk about ED, but it's so important to millions of men and their partners.
Now, while the Catholic Church and Catholics have always viewed abortion negatively, evangelical churches really didn't seem to care about the issue until the 80s. This might seem surprising considering evangelicals' view on abortion today, but at the time of Roe v. Wade in 1972, evangelicals took a fairly moderate stance. The National Evangelical Association took a stance which believed in therapeutic abortion, which is in the case of rape, incest, or potential mental or physical harm to the mother. And the president of the Southern Baptist Conference, W.A. Criswell, who was a very conservative leader, actually said this: "I have always felt that it was only after a child was born and had a life separate from its mother that it became an individual person, and it has always therefore seemed to me that what is best for the mother and for the future should be allowed." A big reason why evangelicals and Protestants might have been indifferent to abortion at the time was simply because it pissed off Catholics. That all changed in the 1980s when a man named Paul Weyrich, aka Dwight Schrute's somehow evil or twin brother, founded the Heritage Foundation with money he obtained from beer magnate Joseph Coors, as in, yes, Coors Light. Jerry Falwell preached that America was in a moral decay, thanks to things like homosexuality, lack of prayer in school, abortion, and of course, feminism. Weyrich helped the Republican Party and Ronald Reagan structure their platform to be in line with those issues as well. This ultimately led to the GOP's victory, and the rest is history. So just to recap, the largest intrusion of religion into our political system was kickstarted by a man who went on later to sell boner pills, was organized by a man who got his money from a beer magnate, and was promoted by a man who went on later in life to say this:
that the pagans and the abortionists and the feminists and the gays and the lesbians who tried to secularize America, I point the finger in their face and say, you helped this happen.
But that still leaves the question how it is that evangelical Christians who are constantly complaining about the moral decay in this country could vote for people like Trump or more. My theory is that while evangelical Christianity isn't a denomination, one principle that seems to unite most evangelical churches is this idea that salvation doesn't come from your good deeds or action, but rather from accepting Jesus into your life and being saved. This is featured in the Southern Baptist Conference's website, where it says that it's God's grace that allows you to come to Him and not your ability to clean up your life. This principle, I believe, creates an odd paradox for some evangelicals, where it's more important to say the right things than it is to actually do the right things. Which means it doesn't matter that Donald Trump and Roy Moore have done bad things, so long as they say and believe the right things. Because salvation doesn't come from your good deeds, but rather through your acceptance of Jesus Christ. And we saw this exact same rationalization made by many Roy Moore supporters.
Is Roy Moore a good Christian?
Yes. Absolutely.
Absolutely?
Just because I don't go to church every time the doors are open doesn't mean I don't believe. And God doesn't expect us to be perfect, but He does expect us to try and repent of our sin.
Now, it should be noted that not all evangelicals are evil hypocrites. There was a real, genuine, honest effort made amongst a lot of evangelical preachers against Donald Trump in the 2016 election, particularly Russell Moore of the Southern Baptist Conference.
A government that has the power to outlaw people from assembling together and saying what they believe, that does not turn people into Christians. That turns people into pretend Christians, and it sends them straight to hell.
However, despite those efforts, nearly 80% of self-identified evangelicals voted for Donald Trump. The problem with evangelicals in America today isn't that they're hypocritical, because in order to be hypocritical, it means that you had principles to stand on in the first place, which evangelicals really don't. That's the more fundamental problem with evangelicals, is what does it mean to be evangelical? Does it just mean that you're against abortion? Does it mean that you expect a certain level of moral integrity from people that you surround yourself with or support? Those things haven't been really well defined, and as a consequence, evangelicals kind of just follow whatever their emotional whim is at any given moment. Well guys, that was my review. I hope it didn't suck, and if you guys have any books that you would like me to review, leave it in the comment section below. I'm actually going to make a little bit more of an honest effort to review books that people give a suggestion to. So yeah, leave a suggestion below. Thanks guys, bye.